Welcome everyone. Oh, there we go. Click the got it button. Okay, I'll start over again. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Mayhack, and welcome everyone to the workshop strategies for creating a winning hack. Ooh, hang on. Let's get the right cursor focus. There we go. We can see slides now. A little bit about myself. As Mayhack said, I was part of the team that won the Space Apps Challenge in 2014 for best use of data with our Space Telescope Twitter feed type prototype. From that, we formed SkyWatch, those of us that were on the team. And the first thing we did was we built out this app to something real and live, and is still running today. If you go to supernova.skywatch.co, you'll see where we took that initial concept to the next level before we pivoted the company into Earth observation data. A little bit about me, more about me. I'm a University of Waterloo graduate, 1985. So yes, I am dating myself. I've been doing software development for 36 years now. I've worked for varying companies, almost 20 years at IBM. Consultant at Sierra Systems, also working in marketing, critical mass. But one thing I did before starting SkyWatch, which was really cool, was I was able to work at McDonald Detweiler and Associates, the inventors of the Canadarm, and we were working on a prototype called the Next Generation Canadarm, which was supposed to be mounted on an unmanned satellite and operated from the ground. And I got the pleasure of working on the operator's console, which was really, really cool. Standing in the clean room with your lab coat on, watching your code run the arm. It was pretty awesome experience. So, but in 2014, after winning Space Apps, we decided to form SkyWatch and haven't looked back. And a little bit of a side thing. When I'm not working at SkyWatch or sleeping, I'm a lead mentor for a FIRST Robotics competition team. If you don't know anything about FIRST Robotics, it's a high school robotics competition to keep things short. I mentor Team 1325, based in Mississauga, and yeah, if you're interested about robotics, DM me on Slack afterwards. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it, or check out firstinspires.org. Okay, but why are we here? Well, it's because you want to win the hackathon, of course, but you've only got 48 hours. So how do you accomplish that? Well, the first thing that you need to think about after you've picked the problem that you want to work on is, what are the judging criteria? If you're really serious about winning, you need to produce something in 48 hours that's going to meet these criteria. And the criteria are, and this is lifted directly from the Space Apps website, is you've got impact, creativity, validity, relevance, and presentation. And for all you techies out there, that's probably the scariest characteristic that you need to worry about. Impact. Well, how much impact, both quality and quantity, does your project have? Do you solve a big problem, or do you solve a little problem? Will it inspire or help many, or just a few people? Creativity. So how creative or innovative is the approach that you took to solving the problem? Is it something novel and not been attempted before, or is it just an incremental improvement on an existing technology? The validity of your solution, it has to be scientifically valid. Will it do what you say it will do? And can it work in the real world? So you're going to have evidence to back that up. Relevance. Is the project responsive to the challenge for which it was submitted? In other words, does it really solve your problem? Is it a complete solution, or do you still have a long way to go with it? Is it technically feasible? Kind of goes back to whether it's scientifically valid. How usable or user-friendly is your solution? And last but not least, which is probably the thing I'm going to spend the most on in this workshop, is the presentation. Is how well did you communicate your project and your solution? Were you effective in telling the story? about the project, which the challenge, the solution, and why your solution is important. Okay, so how would you go about producing a hack that meets all of these criteria? Well, I would argue that if you follow these 6 steps, you'll go a long way to getting there. And basically, it's keep it simple, do your research. What you produce doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to look good, and your video needs to be awesome. And then last but not least, how you plan your time in the next 48 hours is crucial. And we're going to go into each of these steps now in detail. Keep it simple. You've only got 48 hours. Okay, you're not going to be able to create a solution that boils the ocean. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be all-encompassing and production ready. There's just no way. Okay, because the challenges on purpose are broadly and ambiguously worded. Okay, because they want to encourage your imagination. They want you to encourage innovation in your solutions, which is why they don't exactly dot all the I's and cross all the T's, right? So as a result, because these things are so broad, it's really, really important to box in or constrain the scope of what your solution is going to be. Take the time to understand the problem and what the available data is. Then focus on solving maybe the main aspect or the one aspect of the problem. And then as you go through, you're gonna think of other features that would be really cool to have. Well, you know what? If it's 9 p.m. tomorrow night and you're not tired and you got a list of these features, then by all means tackle 1 or 2 of them. But make sure that your main solution is all squared away before you start embarking on those things. Research. This is important. Like, you remember, if you go back to the criteria, your solution has to be scientifically valid and it has to be technically feasible. Well, you're not going to know that if you don't research the problem thoroughly. So for each problem on the NASA Space Apps Challenge page, there's a resources tab, and it lists all the resources that they have available to you for you to be able to understand the problem. Now, in a lot of cases, this list is pretty extensive, okay? It's pretty large. So you're going to need to divide and conquer on this. Each of you are going to need to take an article, maybe spend an hour reading it, and then come back and try to bring your ideas together and start brainstorming around the problem. So a thing that really gives a brownie points to the judges is being able to go beyond the scope of the resources that are listed, though. Don't be afraid to use Google or other sources to find more information about the problem that you're working on, and potentially other sources of data. Some of the best insights and some of the best solutions that are produced come from taking the resources that are provided and combining them with data sets that you found online. And a really good example of this is going back to 2014 when we produced our winning MVP. What we were doing was we were looking at data from NASA Space Telescope network. All of the space telescopes are tied into one network, and as they detect things like supernovas and radio bursts and all other different astronomical phenomena, they feed into this network. And if you look at the raw data, it's gobbledygook, right? So you need to figure out what each of those attributes are and what they are, because you want to take that data and make it accessible to the general public, which is what our MVP did. But what we did then was we also went outside the problem scope to add what we thought was a really cool feature to the prototype. And we went to Google and used what they called Google Sky, which is kind of the opposite of Google Earth, where basically you can scan the night sky and you can see different areas of the night sky and zoom in on different stars and constellations to be able to look at them. I don't know if Google supports it anymore, but at the time it was an up and running app on Google. And what we did was, one of the pieces of information in that event was the coordinates of where the event was occurring. So we were able to feed that into Google's API, and voila, all of a sudden you could see in Google Sky where the event was occurring. Really, really cool feature. And that's because we weren't afraid to kind of go outside the scope of the product and look for things that could help us to help explain the phenomenon that we were seeing. So another thing that we did was we actually talked to the NASA guy who was responsible for the Space Telescope network, and talked to him about hooking into it. Our original thought was we could hook into it. Well, bad idea. We got about 20 sample events and just built our prototype around that. And I'll get more into scaffolding later. But the takeaway there is don't be afraid to talk to somebody. It could really speed up your research. Because like I said, some of the documents that get linked are rather lengthy and rather involved. I mean, you don't want to get lost in a technical paper trying to understand all the nuances. Whereas if you could actually send an email or even talk to the guy that authored the paper and ask him a few questions, things have become a lot clearer. And another great source of experts is the Slack channel that we've set up. I mean, in 2014, we didn't have that. But here you can go on Slack, ask your question, and there's probably 20 mentors who'd be really happy to answer the question for you. I'm going to be mentoring off and on this weekend, mostly tomorrow afternoon and evening, and into Sunday a little bit. But again, there are many people who are experts in different areas, so don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you think they're dumb. Okay, so what you produce doesn't have to be perfect. And I kind of went into that the last time. What we produced wasn't perfect. It was basically a static web app that had a little bit of JavaScript that showed this Google Sky thing, right? And the events that we were showing on our feed were just the 20 scaffolded events that we got from the data guy from the guy at NASA, and we just looped through it, right? So it was really, really basic in terms of what we produced in terms of the prototype. So like a static web page or an interface, constrain the app to do one or two things really well. Don't make it too broad, because if you're gonna build too many features into it, you're not gonna have enough time to fix it and to get it working the way it needs to in order to impress the judges. Scaffolding the data, just like we did. We went to NASA, got 20 sample events, and we were off to the races. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a direct or live source. As a matter of fact, I would really discourage that as you're building your app, because then when it comes time to produce your demo video, you don't want to have to rely on things like an internet connection or a Wi-Fi connection to be able to demonstrate how your app works. If this were a live hackathon, you'd have to weigh the pros and cons of doing a live demo versus a video. What we do in business when we're making business presentations is that we usually favor the live demo, but we always have a video on backup, so that if the live demo in the middle of it, you screw up, you can switch tabs, press play, and say, well, here's how it worked when we videoed it, and take it from there. You can usually explain it away. So you need to make it look good. It needs to stand out from, at least at the Waterloo level, 10, 20, 30 different submissions. I judged at Waterloo last year with the online, and I think we had over 20 submissions that had to be judged. So your presentation needs to stand out. Consistent styling, make sure your theme is consistent. And this is really important, make it succinct and make it clear, okay? Talk about the problem being solved. Explain the solution in its simplest possible terms, pretending that you're explaining it to a 10-year-old, right? Keep it simple. Also, make sure that you talk about the benefits of your solution, both short and long term. You should also have a slide that talks about the challenges that you encountered as you were developing your solution and what you learned from that. And then your presentation should end with what your next steps would be beyond the 48 hours, beyond what you produced. If you were to take your app to the next level, what would you do? So you need the end result, which is your 30-second video, which you're uploading, needs to be flawless. It needs to be killer, right? There is no live presentation this year, so you don't get that nerve-wracking thing of standing up in front of an audience for 5 minutes and demoing your app. All you've got is a 30-second video. Don't try to cram everything in, okay? The more visuals, the better. It's the old saying that a picture's worth 1,000 words. Use as many visuals as possible. And then as you're narrating through your presentation, don't speed read. Write a script that can be easily spoken in 30 seconds and make it so it's easily spoken and deliberate. Like maybe not that deliberate, but make it deliberate. The worst thing that you could do is try to rush through a script that you know that you can't finish in 30 seconds. Because then to a judge, they're looking at, they're listening to that and it's basically unintelligible. Don't do it, okay? Again, make sure that you've got the problem, the solution, and the benefits. Make your presentation simple and engaging, and rehearse. I can't say this enough. Rehearse. Go through your script. If you can't finish it, reading it in a normal pace in 30 seconds, edit it and do it again. Okay, get it right. This is important because you've only got 30 seconds to make an impression. And if you don't make that impression, your hope of coming away with a prize is not going to be very good. And I know for you engineering types out there, you may come up with the most awesome solution, but if you can't present it in a compelling way in 30 seconds, you're done. And I hate to say it, but that's life, and the reality of this hackathon. I'm going to put in a plug for my coworker, Matt. Matt has got a workshop tomorrow at 7 p.m. that talks about creating that killer presentation. And Matt is one of our account executives at SkyWatch, and he is an excellent presenter. You really need to watch his workshop to get an idea of how to make the really killer presentation. So I encourage you to attend that. So last but not least, timing is everything. You've only got 48 hours. You do not have a lot of time. So you need to come up with a schedule. You need to divide and conquer the work, and you need to stick to the plan. In terms of your research and development, your write-up, like in other words, the start of your planning for your video, you should be starting by noon on Sunday. And you'll say 12 hours? Well, that's a ton of time. But believe me, that'll go so quick, you won't know what hit you. Don't wait until 10 p.m. to start your video. You're never going to get it done, okay? Give yourself the time to create the video that's going to win the hackathon, and it's important. So, and then also make sure that your video is done in time to upload it, right? Last year, I'm pretty sure NASA, I think they had some issues. Like, at 11:55, the whole world was uploading their video, and I think they had some issues with their system. Please, try to finish by 11 p.m. and upload it at around 11, and you're not going to have any problem. You're not going to have to sweat through whether or not your video made it on time. Plan for finishing at 11 o'clock and get it done early, okay? And as I said, divide and conquer. You've got a team, use them, use everybody, right? And then bring it all together. And again, make sure that your message is cohesive and consistent, and another word, concise. Okay, that's basically it. Does anybody have any questions? All right, because I don't see anything on the chat, so yeah, thank you.
Roland, hi.
Hi.
Do you hear me? Yeah, Marcus here from
Yeah, I can hear you, Marcus.
Great, fantastic, great to hear you. Great to see you. Thank you so much for this presentation. And my question is, what recommendations for timeline throughout the weekend do you have for participants and teams, i.e., break down the weekend for us if you remember how you and your team had done it, so that you meet as many of these great pieces of advice as possible, because it's very tough to do it, I know, in 48 hours. So what advice do you have as far as timeline is concerned? What are the, like, no, it can't break this time at this point, from here on in, your team should move to doing some next step, for example?
Well, thank you for the question, Marcus, and hello. It's great to see you every year at this event. I'm glad you're back. All right, a more detailed timeline. Well, I kind of gave you the really important one, which was when to start your presentation, right? And by my reckoning, that should be noon on Sunday. I mean, when we did the hackathon, we had to have it done by, like, 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon, because we had to do a live presentation. So we were even under a more time constrained than you guys are here. You've got until midnight. But before that, like, really, by the time, if you're planning on sleeping, by the time you go to bed tonight, you should have your team, you should have your the problem that you want to solve all sorted out, and you should have your research assignments all doled out. Okay, because as I said, once you create that, once you've chosen your problem, you need to start researching the background on that problem, right? So hopefully you've got a team. I mean, if you're doing this by yourself, well, then you're going to have a long night of reading. But divide and conquer, divide up the different tasks that you need to do, and don't forget to research kind of beyond the scope of what they list for resources. Then, as you come together tomorrow morning, you should be starting to come up with ideas on how to solve the problem, because theoretically you've gone through and you've done your reading and you've done your research. Now, depending on the problem set, maybe there's a lot more that you need to read. You could extend the research maybe into the middle of the morning on Saturday, but I really wouldn't go past about 10 or 10:30 a.m. for doing the research. It's a hackathon. You've got 48 hours. You're not supposed to sleep much, so I mean, you really need to use your time. So then, once you've got the research together, then you need to come together and start throwing ideas around, brainstorming. Very, very typical way to solve a problem. That's kind of what we did. And we came up, like in our hackathon, we kind of came up with the idea of a Twitter for the stars, right? That was kind of our byline, kind of the thing that we were producing. And then based on that, we did a little more research, because we were looking for how to access the data, and ended up calling the NASA guy. So I think it was probably around Saturday afternoon that we started coding. And as I said, we made it very simple. It was a feed of the event, and then a little window that showed Google Sky kind of off on one side. And that was basically our app. And then we spent, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Saturday night. It got pretty late, if I remember correctly. I think we were up until about 2 or 3 in the morning coding, trying to getting our website together, which we finally did do. And then, because of the compressed timelines, we got a few hours of sleep, came back early the next morning, and we started working on the presentation. We spent all of Sunday leading up to the presentation just working on it. And I tell you, it really paid off, because like we had a great pitch. And the demo went flawlessly, which was great as well. The rest is history, basically, and here we are 7 years later, and we've got a company that's funded to the tune of about $35 million. So I mean, there you go. Like dreams can happen from these things. But yeah, that's kind of the basic timeline that I would follow. Kind of be tying up your research Saturday morning, and then getting into coding or developing your solution. I mean, like if your solution doesn't involve code, then you basically need to put together the science behind it, right? You need to put together how the scientific process for solving your problem. And then, starting Sunday, you need to be putting that into some sort of a coherent presentation. That's kind of I hope that answers your question. But that's kind of basically what I would follow.
Fantastic. Thank you, Roland. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Okay. Well, if that's it, I guess, feel free to reach out to me on Slack. As I said, I'll be monitoring Slack all weekend. I won't exactly be active, for different parts of the day. Like tomorrow morning is a bit of an issue for me. And then again for a little bit on Sunday, yeah, reach out to me, ask me questions, even if you think they're stupid. I'm a Python coder right now by trade. I do know Java. I used to code Java a lot. I have expertise in obtaining satellite data, which of course we do all the time at SkyWatch. So I understand how to grab those data sets and what you need to do to process them. And then of course, how to plan your time in a hackathon. So feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, and if you're interested about knowing more about SkyWatch, there's our contact information. So our Twitter feed, our website, and if you want to send us an email, by all means. And then yes, and of course I've got the sponsor slide. I don't know, Mayhack, if you want to talk to this, or am I supposed to talk to it?
No, but these are just thank you to all of our sponsors for making this event happen. But just to let everyone know, this recording will also be available. So if you do want to look at it over the weekend and come back to some of the really important points that Roland brought up, feel free to do so. We'll be sending the link in Slack soon, so you can have access there. There aren't any other questions. We can wrap up this workshop, but thank you so much, Roland, for all of your expertise and sharing it with everyone, and see everyone throughout the weekend. Bye.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.